Hi everyone, we're going to start with the new SAT writing and grammar section. We're going to go over a review of the grammar structure and punctuation that's contained in this segment. So let's jump right into it. The first type of grammar error that we're going to come across is subject-verb agreement. Oftentimes you'll have to deal with a singular subject versus a plural subject and its agreement with the verb. But watch out for the ones that are collective nouns. For example, let's say the band. If I say the band, right, I'm talking about it as a unit. I'm not talking about the individuals in the band. But the second that I start talking about the individuals and their various projects that they're working on, now we're talking in the plural because you're talking about more than one person. Parallel structure. We have two different kinds. The first is a gerund. A gerund is a general class of activity. Doesn't mean they have to do it yourself, just means that it's something that you enjoy. Maybe I like biking, hiking, and swimming. Some people say, I like watching Dancing with the Stars. Doesn't mean that you're on Dancing with the Stars, you're just watching it. So that's just an idea of a general class of activity. So gerund, general. Infinitives are more specific. This means that you actually like to do whatever you're indicating. I like to hike, to bike, and to swim. But where the SAT will try to trick you is that they'll take these two pieces and try to put them together. So they'll say, I like hiking and to swim. Now out loud it sounds kind of funny, but on the page it hides. So this is where you employ one of the first tricks, which is mouthing the words to yourself to be able to trigger that part of your brain where it notices pieces that are incorrect with grammar and structure. Improper comparison is another type of structure, parallel structure entity. You cannot compare people to inanimate objects. For example, I prefer the work of Van Gogh more than Monet. So if I said the sentence the way that it is right now, I'm comparing the work or the inanimate object that was made by Van Gogh to the guy Monet. So we need to fix this. So I prefer the work of Van Gogh more than that of Monet, that being the placeholder for the work. Or you can just repeat work. I prefer the work of Van Gogh more than the work of Monet. Or I prefer the works, right? Because there's more than one work of Van Gogh, more than the works of Monet. So if I said here like a specific painting, oh goodness, sorry. If I said here a specific painting, then what I could do is maybe repeat the specific painting here. But paintings to paintings, people to people, not a painting to a person. So very important to remember. With a misplaced modifier, I dug up a sentence from the old SAT because it really exemplifies the misplaced modifier at work. And what I like to think of with a misplaced modifier is that you'll have an intro, generally a comma, and generally the subject that you're talking about. Sometimes the subject will be misplaced. So the first sentence here, because they can eat a large number of insects, some people are building bat houses in their backyards. Now look, I know some places around the world that we enjoy an insect or two, but I think what they're implying is that the bats are eating the insects, not the people. So because they can eat a large number of insects, some people are building bat houses in their backyards. This is saying that the people are eating the insects and it really should be the bats. So we have to fix it. So what happens, so really this sentence I think actually reads, some people are building bat houses in their backyards because bats can eat a large number of insects. Or you could say people. People are building bat houses in their backyards just in general because bats can eat a large number of insects. So that's better. People are building the bat houses, the bats are eating the insects, everybody's doing their job that they should be. Okay. Idiomatic errors. This is the misuse of a preposition. So here's a really good sentence, and it's somewhat of a tricky one, and probably the hardest one that I present to students at any point in time, just as sort of a litmus test of what you know about your prepositions and prepositional phrases. So I am independent of my parents, or I am independent from my parents. So take a second and think about that. Are you independent of, or are you independent from? One is probably used in, sort of your everyday speech. And the other probably sounds a little bit awkward. So if you said from, I'm independent from my parents, think about this. Is it the declaration from independence or is it the declaration of independence? It's of. Of, you want to be amongst the independents, right? You don't want to be going away from it. So oftentimes with prepositions, you have very little literal interpretations of what it's doing. Another great example would be, I prefer spaghetti over linguine, or I prefer spaghetti to linguine. Well, if you say over, you actually physically have your spaghetti sitting on a plate over linguine. So if you're talking about preference, I prefer one to another. Trimming sentences, oftentimes we're dealing with having the same word and then a definition of that word. You'll see in a couple of the practice tests, they'll try to use the word annual, which means each year or yearly. You only need one of the words to define what's being said. So be careful. They're going to try to use two to define something that really only takes one word. The last grammar error that I have found often is when they're asking you what word should you use here, and they try to misuse a vocab word. So proceed means to continue, and precede means to come before, but they sound really similar. So those are called homonyms. So you really want to take a look at some of them. They're really great lists online on Quizlet, where you can look them over and just have the definition straight in your head. It also benefits you for the critical reading section as well, because that comes up with the vocabulary. So there's other kinds of errors as well. So it's not just going to be straight grammar rules that you need to fix. It's also going to be content errors. So this is where we have to pay attention to the content. I mentioned that in the other video when we were talking about the overview for the PSAT. So the first and foremost are transitions, words and phrases. So you want to read the sentence prior to the word in question, then skip the transition word or phrase and continue reading. Your brain will naturally input the word that should be there. Words like however, therefore, as such, moreover, right? These are types of transition words and phrases. So read the sentence before, get a sense of what's going on, skip the word or phrase that's in question, and continue reading. For transition sentences, what I like to do is read the sentence from the previous paragraph, read the sentence that's in question, so the sentence that they've underlined, and then read the next sentence for context. That should be enough information if that sentence should stay or go and if it's doing its job. So you need a little bit of a running start for these types of questions. They're going to ask three other kinds of questions. Is there enough content? There's too much content, and should the content be moved? So if there's enough, they're often adding a sentence. They're saying, should this be here? Is there enough? Like, do we need to add something else? Is there too much content? Should we take something away? So you pay attention again, read sentences before and after to see if it fits. And then lastly, should it be moved? Should the sentence or the paragraph be moved? So should we send that someplace else? So you have to pay attention to sort of the content in general. What I like to do with this moved piece, I like to read the question that is in question. So if I say, okay, where should sentence 4 go? I read sentence 4 first, and then I read the paragraph without sentence 4. So much like transition words and phrases, that helps me understand where I should put all of that information. Okay, punctuation. So lots of different types of punctuation. So we have commas, apostrophes, semicolons, colons, periods, end dash, and parentheses. So let's talk about colons and semicolons because they're traditionally the pieces that students get incorrect. I'm going to start with my rhyme for commas first, and then we'll build into colons and semicolons. My rhyme for commas: when you need to break, when you need to pause, when you need to separate an independent clause, use a comma, right? So if it breaks a sentence, it's a splice. So be careful with your commas. They should be natural. You shouldn't be over chopping the sentence. When it comes to colons and semicolons are related to the family of commas and periods, but a colon is like not related at all, right? They're like the strange neighbor. If you saw the Emoji Movie, I didn't see it, but I saw the commercial for it. I don't think actually many people saw it this summer. But there was the happy emoji is walking by, this like crotchety old colon emoji. He goes, oh, my colon. Think of it like that. Think of it as just like not related to sort of the comma, the semicolon, and the period. So the colons indicate a list, a definition, or a clarification of the subject. So And you will not continue talking after that has been clarified. So you're going to put a period after that list, that definition or clarification. You can continue the conversation of the sentence if you use an en dash, however. So that could be interchangeable instead of a colon. Semicolons connect two independent but related sentences together. Think of them like a period. So that's what you're going to think of. Okay, so here's the strategy. What you want to do is test each option completely back into the sentence. Make your selection, and then use your selection to continue reading as one answer will affect the next, And we're going to see that in a couple of the questions that we're going to work on. Don't skim anything, because if you do, you're going to miss that content information that's really important for moving sentences or paragraphs or transitions around. Okay, so here we are with question number 1 from your practice test. So it says here, a nod to nodding off. Okay, so this is a little short passage about napping. Don't we all wish we could be taking one right now? Oh, it'd be amazing, right? Okay, so here we are with a passage about napping. So it says, with 30% of United States workers not getting enough sleep at night, according to the Wall Street Journal, U.S. companies lose a yearly sum of $63.2 billion annually due to the drop in employee productivity resulting from sleep deprivation. Sounds a little awkward. I had trouble reading that even. So if that's the case, we want to try to see if we could maybe trim out some things that are unnecessary. So if I see lose a yearly sum of $63.2 billion annually due to the drop in employee productivity, I'm just wondering if we can get rid of, if we can get rid of some information. So see where it says annual loss in each year. Oh my gosh, I just talked about that, right? So if we have that, see an annual loss of $63.2 billion, or you see a loss of $63.2 billion each year, right? It's either going to be this one or that one. We don't need both. So we know that B is going to be out. Have a yearly loss of $63.2 billion annually. Again, we have the same issue. They're just using slightly different language here. And then here, if you look at A, lose a yearly sum of $63.2 billion annually. Again, annually and yearly are one and the same. We need one word to say that, so C would be our best answer. So a lot of the same strategies that we used in the critical reading, we want to use here as well. We want to get rid of statements that really do not make sense and that are repetitive in nature. So this is the second page of the same work. We're taking a look here at sort of how do we rephrase the content with question number 2. One of the big reasons behind workers' lack of sleep is the work itself. That sounds a little basic for the language that they're using here. And if this is an article that was written in, say, Newsweek, we would probably choose better vocabulary to express it. So let's just try to see if we can test in some other options. One of the main things leading up to workers' lack of sleep is the work itself. Oh, geez. This word, oh golly. This word, things and stuff. The words that your English teachers probably cringe if you write in an essay. What thing are they talking about? So it needs to be more specific. So both of these answers are offering really vague language here. So one of the primary causes of workers' lack of sleep is the work itself. Ooh, that sounds a little bit better because we used a better vocabulary word. So D is going to be my answer for question number 2. So we're going to continue reading and we're going to move into number 3. To combat the problem of sleep deprivation in a demanding work environment, some companies have begun allowing workers to take naps. The hours the average American spend working have increased dramatically since the 1970s, making it hard for many workers to get a good night's sleep. The hours the average American spend. So you're talking about not the hours spend. Who's spending it? The American spends, right? So we have a singular subject and you have a singular verb. So the hours the average American spends, right, working, have increased dramatically since the 1970s. So the last two questions that we're dealing with are right here, number 4 and 5. Number 4 says, although employees who sleep on the job are often considered lazy and unproductive, napping in the workplace has been shown to improve workers' efficiency and quality of life. As long as companies continue to demand long hours from workers, and managers should champion napping as a means to keep employees happy, healthy, and functional. Kind of strange, isn't it, with the and? So when we're working through this, I don't think that we have natural complete sentences, so I would eliminate the semicolon. As long as companies continue to demand hours from workers, managers should champion napping as a means to keep employees happy, healthy, and functional. So what would happen is that I would just naturally use the comma here and continue progressing. So to me, D is your best answer for number 4. And then finally, to make the paragraph most logical, sentence 3 should go where? So let's read sentence 3, and then we're going to figure out where it should go in the rest of the sentence. The hours the average American spends working have increased dramatically since the 1970s, making it hard for many workers to get a good night's sleep. So now what I would do is take a look at the rest of the paragraph. One of the primary causes of workers' lack of sleep is the work itself. To combat the problem of sleep deprivation in a demanding work environment, some companies have begun allowing workers to take naps. Although employees who sleep on the job are often considered lazy and unproductive, napping in the workplace has been shown to improve workers' efficiency and quality of life. As long as companies continue to demand long hours from workers, managers should champion napping as a means to keep employees happy, healthy, and functional. So where should we put sentence number 3? So I feel like it's introducing sort of the problem. So I think it should be closer to the top. So not after sentence 4 or where it is now. So I would get rid of A and D right away. And then it's just a matter of, well, is it truly introducing what's going on, or is sentence 1 doing a good job? So let's reread them together. One of the primary causes of workers' lack of sleep is the work itself. The hours the average American spends working have increased dramatically since the 1970s, making it hard for many workers to get a good night's sleep. So sentence 3 is qualifying what's going on with sentence 1. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the math video.